Daniel had learned to live with the quiet laughter that followed him through the narrow streets of the small town. People didn't insult him directly. Their pity was worse than cruelty. At his repair shop, he fixed broken radios, fans, and sometimes old watches, working with patient hands that told a different story than the one people believed about him. He was shy, yes, and awkward in conversation, but he noticed everything. The way lonely customers lingered just to talk, the way children smiled when he secretly refused payment for small fixes. Still, none of that mattered to those who judged worth by charm and appearance. The annual community gathering filled the town square with music, lights, and cheerful conversations that only made Daniel feel more out of place. Groups formed easily, laughter rising into the cool evening air, while he stood near the edge of the hall, pretending to check messages on his phone. He had forced himself to come, hoping this year might feel different, but the familiar glances and murmurs returned quickly. Someone whispered something that made a few others chuckle, and Daniel felt the heat of embarrassment crawl up his neck. He told himself he would stay 5 more minutes, just long enough to avoid looking like he had been rejected again. As he waited, memories surfaced of all the times he had tried to step outside his quiet routine, invitations politely declined, conversations that faded into awkward silence, kind smiles that never meant anything more. He wondered if people were right about him, if perhaps he simply didn't belong in the bright, effortless world everyone else seemed to navigate so easily. The music swelled, couples drifted toward the dance floor, and Daniel stepped back until his shoulders touched the wall, wishing he could disappear into it. Deciding he had endured enough, he lowered his gaze and turned toward the exit, ready to return to the safety of his silent workshop. Before he could reach the door, headlights flashed across the windows, cutting through the warm glow of the hall. Conversations paused as a sleek black car rolled to a stop outside, its polished surface reflecting the strings of lights above. Curiosity spread instantly. People moved toward the entrance, whispering guesses about who could possibly arrive so late in such dramatic fashion. Daniel hesitated near the doorway, unsure whether to slip out unnoticed or stay. The car door opened slowly, and a woman stepped out with calm confidence, her presence commanding attention without a single word spoken. She carried herself with effortless elegance, her expression composed yet searching, as her eyes moved across the crowd gathered at the entrance. Conversations hushed as she walked forward, heels clicking softly against the pavement, as if the entire evening had shifted to revolve around her arrival. Then, unexpectedly, her gaze settled past everyone else and found Daniel standing slightly behind the others. For a brief moment, the noise of the world seemed to fade. Her face softened into a warm, certain smile. Not polite, not curious, but familiar, as though she had finally found someone she had been searching for all along. Elena moved through the crowd without hesitation, her eyes never leaving Daniel, as if the rest of the room had simply faded away. People stepped aside instinctively, their curiosity turning into stunned silence as she stopped in front of him. Up close, Daniel could see a trace of emotion beneath her confident composure, something sincere that made his nervousness pause. She spoke his name softly, as though it carried meaning she had held onto for years. Confused, he searched his memory, certain they had never met, yet unable to ignore the strange familiarity in her expression and the warmth in her voice. She reminded him of a rainy evening long ago, when a stranded young woman had wandered into his repair shop with a broken phone and no money to pay. Daniel had fixed it anyway, offering her a cup of tea while she waited and refusing any reward. At the time, he had thought nothing of it. Helping people was simply what he did. Elena explained that she had been at her lowest point then, alone in a new city, ready to give up on her dreams. His quiet kindness, given without judgment or expectation, had restored a piece of her faith in people she thought she had lost forever. As she spoke, the room listened in disbelief. The same voices that once mocked him now, silent and uncertain. Elena told them how she had built her success from that moment forward, carrying the memory of a stranger who treated her like she mattered when she felt invisible. She had searched for him for years, determined to thank him properly, and to find the man who valued compassion over recognition. Daniel struggled to process her words, overwhelmed by the realization that a small, but forgotten act had shaped a life in ways he had never imagined. For the first time, he saw himself reflected through someone else's grateful eyes. Elena gently reached for his hand, her gesture natural and unforced, as if it had always been meant to happen. The warmth of her touch grounded him, dissolving the doubt that had shadowed him for so long. Around them, people exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier judgments now exposed as shallow and mistaken. Daniel felt no anger toward them, only a quiet release from the need to prove himself. In Elena's steady gaze, he sensed genuine respect, something deeper than admiration, a recognition of the person he had always been, beneath the assumptions and whispers. In that moment, Daniel understood that the years of being overlooked had not been empty or meaningless. They had shaped the patience, empathy, and humility that Elena now valued more than wealth or charm. The future he had once assumed would be small and predictable, suddenly stretched wide with possibility. As the crowd remained frozen in astonishment, Elena smiled at him with quiet certainty, as though inviting him into a new chapter neither of them had planned, but both somehow needed. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt truly seen, and he stepped forward, ready to discover what that meant.